Hello and welcome to Construction Week's expert interviews, where we discuss all things significant to the region's built environment. My name is Disha Dadlani, and I'm multimedia reporter at Construction Week. Today, I'm pleased to be joined in the studios by Lynnette Abad, who is Director of Research and Data at Property Finder. Lynnette, it's a pleasure to have you in the studios. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me today.
All right, so Lynette, let's begin on a positive note. And let's have you address Dubai's property market and its recovery path. Is the Emirates real estate sector well on its way to recovery? And maybe you could tell us a bit more about when you expect it to get back on its feet again.
Okay, so yes, it has recovered very, very well during COVID. If you look at the trend lines from 2020 to now 2021, obviously we had a very strong Q1 leading from H2 2019, which was also very strong. And then the pandemic happened here in this region around March time. And then that's when we started to see transactions start to decline a little bit. And then in May, June, we kind of bottomed out where we had about 1,000 transactions a month. Then we started to see what we're calling in the market a V-shaped recovery. So transactions started to go back up July, August, September. And as of February, we're still on a month-to-month increase transaction-wise. If I have to say, over the last few months, transaction levels have been in the 3,800, so the 3,800 range to 4,000 transactions a month. We've also have beaten quite a few records this year when it came to stats and trends in the residential sector. So, for example, one trend that we started to see this year is especially when the pandemic started to take place, people were looking for secondary ready homes. So homes that they can move into right now versus off plan. Right. So we've had month on month since, I would say, October, we've beaten the record for the highest secondary ready transactions. And actually February of last year, we're going to be coming out with this data tomorrow, we then again beat that record for highest secondary residential transactions for the last 7 years.
Right. Now, Lynette, COVID-19 has, of course, jolted the Emirates real estate sector. I'm sure you'd agree with me on that. We can argue whether this was for the better or the worse for the real estate sector. But let's talk about this change. You spoke about a couple of trends and records. Now, tell me a bit about what are the drivers for the current demand and pricing in terms of the Dubai's real estate sector.
That's a very good question. There's a lot of dynamics to this answer. So first and foremost, let me start in the very beginning. So when the pandemic hit in March, we immediately started to see our search data. So people coming onto a Property Finder and searching for properties increased by 400% for villa townhouses. Okay. So before it was higher percentage searches for apartments. As of the pandemic and to this day, we are seeing people search more for villa townhouses. Why is this? The other thing that we saw in the trends is people were starting to search for balconies, outside space, backyards, and pools. And this all correlates to villa townhouses or just bigger spaces. Also, within the same amount about timing, and we can say whether or not it was due to COVID or not, because the prices were starting to decline a little bit when it came to sales and also rentals, is the villa townhouse sector became very appetizing to people, especially like in the suburban areas, like the Dubai Land area, as well as like the Dubai South areas. So you're able to move, from example, a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom apartment in Dubai Marina and pay the same price or maybe even less for a 3-bedroom townhouse with a nice backyard in Dubai Land for a townhouse. Right. So this was a trend that we started to see in the very beginning of COVID, and it's still a trend that we're seeing to today. So for example, as I said earlier, we saw what people were searching for. These searches have now transpired into transactions. So we're seeing the highest level, not only for secondary and ready market properties, but we're seeing the highest level transactions in the townhouse villa sector as well over the last 7 years.
Right, right. So that's an increase on in terms of open spaces as well. You see that people Absolutely. Are searching for apartments and townhouses because of the need for more open spaces, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other facet to that is that our home became everything. Yeah. It became our office. It became home. It became schools for our children. It became our place for recreational activities. More cooking time at home. Obviously, we had to spend more time at home. So people extremely quickly saw value in their home space. And this is where we started to see people transitioning renting or buying property immediately as soon as the restrictions eased.
Right. It's interesting that you've mentioned office because, of course, work from home culture is something that has peaked quite a bit during the last year. Now, obviously, among the different pillars of real estate, the office market, and I'm sure you'd agree with me, has undergone massive change. What kind of a long-term impact do you think this market is going to see? Let's say even post-COVID. I don't know if we're there yet, but how is the market going to be impacted?
So we've seen quite a few trends come out of the office market. And most of these trends that I speak of are not immune to Dubai, UAE. They're actually global trends. So one of the trends that we saw, especially where restrictions were very harsh and all over the world, is you had people that had small offices look for larger offices because of social distancing. Right? So people were maybe moving from like the inner city areas where they can only afford a smaller office to more of like the suburban areas where they can get larger office space. Another trend that we started to see is that a lot of companies, especially in the region, realize, do I really need an office? My staff is working from home full time. We ourselves at Property Finder, we were never a work from home culture, and we literally became one overnight. And it was a week or two of a little bit of pain, trying to get everything set up. But now it's a flawless system that works. So a lot of companies realize that they can have their employees work from home and they do not need an office. Also, another trend that we saw was the increase in demand for shared office space. Again, people realized they didn't need the office. Many of their employees were working from home. If someone did want to come to the office, they had the option to come to the shared office space. Another trend that we saw is a lot of people who did eventually come back to the office, the companies made it more of an open floor kind of plan. And this is what we've always had at Property Finder, what works very, very well. Like there's a big distance between each other at the desk. We have a lot of breakout areas, and it's just a nice, very comfortable office environment where you can go back as restrictions ease and felt comfortable being surrounded around others in the office.
Right. Now, you've obviously already addressed the office market. Let's go back to the residential market. It's quite a spectrum now. Let's have you address the movements in the affordable housing sector as well as luxury housing. What's it been like in the past year, and what kind of movement have you seen?
This has been very interesting because obviously we saw what we called pent-up demand, okay? So in the beginning of the crisis, we were having webinars for all our clients, and we spoke a lot about pent-up demand because this was a time, and if you look at the trends, if we go back a little bit from 2019, how H1 did, and then how transactions were increasing month on month in H2, and then we had a really strong Q1. When the crisis happened and the UAE central bank eased the LTV to 20% or 80%, we started to see a surge in inquiries. So a surge in leads, a surge in mortgage applications. So our sister company, Mortgage Finder, had record-breaking months on months for mortgage applications. And these are end users, consumers who are looking to buy property, who have been here for a few years, let's say 3+ years, engaging the market to see, is it a good time to buy? They've been seeing prices come down. And then now the LTV is lower. Prices were going down in a lot of the affordable and luxury communities. And they were what we would call affordable, depending on what bracket you're in, right? So this was a time where we've seen quite a few people snap up the affordable housing, especially like in the outskirts, like the Dubai land areas, Dubai South, Discovery Gardens, International City. There's a lot of new development in those areas as well. And then we also saw quite a few people snatch up really good luxury properties, Palm Jumeirah being one. Downtown, we had quite a few of interesting off-plan transactions in the luxury sector that broke records for off-plan luxury property. So these were the people who were watching the market. They realized this is probably the bottom, May, June time. And this is where a lot of properties started to get purchased. So when it comes to the affordable sector, there are still a lot of really good opportunities. If you're looking in the prime popular sections, like for example, if you're looking like in the Marina, JBR, you're looking at Springs, Lakes, Meadows, we've seen increase in price and increase in demand and lack of supply.
Right, right.
So the dynamic of the market has really changed significantly over the last few months. In the luxury sector, you can no longer find a property in Palm Jumeirah that's affordable for luxury, right?
Right.
In downtown, I remember in May you could buy a 1-bedroom apartment in Burj Khalifa for 1.5 million. That no longer exists. So as I said, the dynamics are changing. Yes, this is a great time to buy, regardless of which sector you're going to, affordable or luxury, but that time frame is going to be very short.
And are you seeing luxury become more affordable? Is that what
It
you're
did.
alluding to as well?
It did. It was. It was much more affordable when we were like in the thick of the pandemic, even when restrictions started to ease. Because obviously, actually, an interesting stat that I can tell you is in June and July, the majority of the mortgage inquiries that were coming in were for 5 million and over.
Oh, okay, that's quite interesting.
So there was a surge in the demand in the luxury market because I believe that people who were looking at the luxury sector realized, okay, now the prices are good. This is something that makes sense to me. This is where I want to buy. But since then, the prices have increased.